Amanda, I am still laughing about last week's episode with Faith and Tori. I'm not sure we could have found better guests for Overboard, especially since it's Tori's favorite movie of all time.
Oh, no, right? It was so fun. And this week we're having fun again. We're sailing away from high seas chaos to taking the ferry over to high stakes corporate ambition.
Real fans, this week we are diving into Working Girl, a movie that proves that sometimes the best way to climb the corporate ladder is with a little creativity and a lot of courage.
Yes, this one's got everything: romance, ambition, and Carly Simon belting out the anthem of the 80s. Let's go. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy, and this is Real Sisters Rewind.
Join us as we go back to the 80s.
Hi, Real fans. It's Big Sister Missy here with Little Sister and co-host Amanda. And this is the podcast where we revisit our favorite films from the 80s, scene by scene, sprinkling in some trivia, pop culture, and plenty of laughs along the way.
And if you're new here, welcome. Today, we've got something extra special for you. Joining us today is a real live working girl, Amanda Thompson.
Welcome, Amanda. Welcome. Amanda, everyone, she is one of my favorite people in the world, like for sure. And she's definitely my most favorite working girl ever. So welcome, Amanda. We couldn't think of anyone better to join us for Working Girl. You're going to bring such a great perspective to this movie. We're glad you're here. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, Missy and Amanda. And interesting, Missy, you and I actually met through work. And
we did.
I never will forget the day that you called me. And not only did we meet through work, but we've become great friends. And Amanda, Missy and I took an air quote working trip down to New Orleans and had a lot of fun being together. And I just feel like we forged so many incredible memories together over the years. And Missy, we've gone through leadership classes together. We've shared work experiences, and just, it's crazy to think. I was thinking before I came on this podcast, we've known each other for over a decade.
I know. I was thinking the same thing when I was preparing. I was like, what a blessing that's been for 10 years of my life. And what fun did we have when we went to New Orleans, staying at Sister Amanda's house.
Oh my gosh.
It was so fun. I was thinking about that today too, actually. And you got us the embroidered PJ pants, Missy.
Monogrammed like Southern girls need. Plaid and monogrammed. And we had the cutest picture of the three of us. We'll have to use that on social this week.
That would be really, really cute.
Yeah, that was fun. What else, Amanda Thompson? Tell everybody about what you do.
Oh my goodness. So I guess like a working girl, I've kind of done a lot of different things.
You've done everything I could think of. That's legal. That's legal.
I'm very much a rule follower. I started my career in talent acquisition and human resources. I then got recruited into sales. And I was terrified to be in sales because I did not want to be a quote unquote salesperson. And then I spent the next 15 years in sales, loving it in some form or fashion, built my marketing, my training, my leadership development experience along the way. And today I lead marketing strategy for a tech firm by day. And by night, I actually own a skincare brand that I have formulated, built, and taken to market. And I'm actually in the place of seeing a new fun chapter of that brand come to life.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. We'll have a little coffee catch up on Zoom soon, and you can give me all the details. You're an amazing person. You are someone that I have looked up to for over a decade, and you are the quintessential entrepreneur, leader, and people person. So we're so glad you're here. Right, Amanda? Sister Amanda?
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to all our real fans out there. Please don't forget to subscribe, download. Amanda, I didn't realize how important the download piece of this whole podcast thing is. Like,
Yes.
it's crucial for the podcast to stay alive kind of out in the universe. So download our podcast, please, and then leave us a 5-star review. And when you do, take a screenshot, email it over to hello@realsistersrewind.com, and we'll send you a Real Sisters Rewind sticker as a thank you.
Absolutely. All right. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Missy, shall we set the stage?
Absolutely. Let's rewind and take a look back at the world of 1988 and the fascinating facts behind this iconic movie. All right, real fans, the date was December 21st, 1988. That's when Working Girl premiered in theaters. Now, sister, you were just 12, and Amanda T., I'm thinking you're just a year older than my sister, yes? So you were 12 or 13?
Yeah, I think so. I was born in 1976. So
Me too.
Oh,
We
so
were
y'all
both
were,
12.
I was thinking y'all were a year and a day apart, but you're just a day apart, girls.
I think we're
Oh
just
my
a day apart.
gosh.
All this time I thought y'all were a year and a day apart. What was the matter with you?
Oh, we are such twinsies.
Y'all are Twinkies. Well, I was 20. And so I know that you two didn't see it in theaters. I did. I have a story. But first, I want to know, like, when did you girls see it first? And let's throw it to our guest first, Amanda. Sister, what do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Amanda, when did you first see this movie?
I first saw Sister Amanda or Thompson Amanda.
You.
Thompson.
Okay. I actually just saw this movie recently, thinking about coming into this
Really?
podcast. Yes, because for me, being 12, I remember it so vividly at the movie theaters. In fact, I can actually still see the poster of this movie and in my mind. And I remember talking to my mom and I wanted to see it. And my mom told me that I couldn't see it because she told me that Melanie Griffith was a working girl. And by working girl, she meant like a prostitute.
Well, the movie poster kind of led you to maybe believe that.
It was a little
That's so funny.
steamy.
That's so funny. That's hysterical. Well, so you just recently saw it. Well, I saw it. I had seen it before I was an adult on our good old HBO, which I have talked about many times. But it has been many, 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 many years since I've seen it. And so watching it again was really, really fun.
Good. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it, especially Amanda Thompson. You also, like, having just seen it, like, it'll be fun to get your thoughts. Well, I saw it on a date early on in my relationship with Chris Washam. We had just started dating in October of that year, and this was a date night for us. We went to eat at Chesterfield's, and then we went to the movie to see it, and he was a huge Harrison Ford fan, and I just was going along because he was like, let's go see it. And it ended up, we both loved it. And it's one I've seen many times over the years.
Missy, what's Chesterfield's?
Chesterfield's is for all the OGs listening out there from Hattiesburg or Oak Grove in that area. They know Chesterfield's. It is the restaurant where we went for all things, everything back in the 80s and the early 90s. And it's still there. And I still love to go and eat the Chesterfield's cheese toast on the side of the salad. And they have the best fried mushrooms. With the horseradish sauce. Oh my gosh, so
Agreed. Agreed. So let's set the scene for what's going on in the world when this movie debuted. You can't talk about this movie without talking about the music. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Well, the number one song on the American Top 40 was Look Away by Chicago. It was
Look
such
away,
a dramatic.
baby, look away.
It was so dramatic. It was such a dramatic song. It's one of those power ballads that was everywhere, always on the radio, in the malls, you name it. And then I also read on the Billboard Top 100, and I wanted to throw this in because it's so different from Look Away, was Every Rose Has Its Thorn by
goodness.
Poison,
Yes.
which was the dance song, like at the boy girl dances.
Oh, was it?
Oh, yes. It was like a slow, I mean, I guess they were both slow songs, which, I don't know. But yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember it very clearly.
Okay, so do you ladies have a favorite Chicago song? I'm not going to ask about Guns N' Roses, and you can share
No,
that too.
It wasn't Guns N' Roses. It was Poison.
Poison. That was kind of like rock. I wasn't into rock. Adventure movies, rock. That like heavy metal rock I'm not into. So I'm taking it back to Chicago because they had so many great hits. Do y'all have a favorite?
I will tell you that I loved the Chicago cassette. I played it in a Walkman.
Yes.
And I can remember, I don't even know the name of the album, but it was, just something I listened to all the time. And then the Karate Kid 2 came out, and Peter Cetera, so not technically Chicago, but Peter Cetera did the song, and I just loved that song so much. And so while not technically a Chicago song, it was probably my favorite and most memorable. But Chicago I would say they're like a top 5 of all times for me.
For sure. But what was the song?
I don't even know.
The Karate Kid song? I can't think of the name of it either. It's the one.
I will fight for your honor.
The shining arm. I will fight. That's it. I will fight for your honor. All
right. What about you, Amanda?
It shows that we're the same age because that's exactly how I feel about it. Probably my favorite Chicago song might be Look Away, but then the Karate Kid song is what really came to my mind. But then I remembered, I was like, oh, but that was Peter Cetera. So I guess I don't know if that really counts, but I had the same thought, Amanda.
It's called The Glory of Love. I just looked it up. The Glory of Love.
Well, Chicago was like the soundtrack of the 80s, like late high school, early college for me. And there would be so many I could choose, but I think of the one that made me happy, right? Like some of them were these love songs and Broken Heart, but I loved Saturday in the Park. I love that
Chicago?
Song. Yes. Mm-hmm. Must have been
I didn't know that.
I love
that song too.
It just makes me smile. It makes me so happy. All right. So we talk about that Chicago was everywhere and that these songs were everywhere. I want to talk about a dance that was everywhere, a dance that was very popular. And real fans, I just want to share with you that my sister forbids me to do this dance. Now,
my gosh.
If you could see her, she just buried her head in her hands. I'm going to see if she can guess what dance I'm talking about. I've tried to do it well for years. As a matter of fact, I tried, back at the holidays a while back. Amanda, my sister Amanda, what dance was popular that you forbid me to do?
Well, there's a couple that I'm thinking, I know, Roger Rabbit.
Well, is it Roger Rabbit? I thought it was called The Running Man. So maybe that's why you don't like me to do The Running Man.
So that's the other one.
Okay.
That's when you said when I said there were a couple. It's The Running Man, and either one of those, or you don't need to put your body. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Those were the couple, Running Man and Roger Rabbit.
Well, maybe if I had been 8 years younger like you two, I would have mastered it. But, I couldn't do it. I was out of the swing of dancing. Amanda Thompson, can you do the Running Man or the Roger Rabbit? Are you much of a dancer?
I can. I can do both, actually, and I can do them still to this day. And I embarrass my kids because, now all the Gen Zers do a version of the Running Man, except they kind of skip a little bit and move across. So It's an updated version of the Running Man. And I think I blew my youngest's mind when I showed him that I could do that and do it well. And he looked at me like I was magic. He's like, how did you learn how to do that? And I said, because like I was the OG who learned how to do it.
Well, Missy needs to stay away. And also, if I
want to do it, you need to just look away, baby, look away.
I've tried to give her tutorials step by step, like do this. And if I had a secret video, I swear I would put it on our Instagram. If I had a secret video, but I don't.
You don't. Well, I saw when I was researching this, there are some tutorials by professionals that I'm gonna give it a shot when I'm all by myself. I'm gonna try, and then next time we're together, sister, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna really.
Okay. Well, your body, I don't think your body moves that way, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, are there other real fans out there my age that struggle with it? Because maybe it's a thing. Because there was a time in my life I could dance. I don't know why I can't get it. All right, let's move on.
Is it just like, I'm curious now for everyone listening, like, is it like an Elaine from Seinfeld issue? Is it that your body is it like rigid?
Yes. She's too rigid. Like she can't, like when you do you kind of have to have like a looseness, and like she doesn't have that. She wants it to be like 5, 6, 7, 8, and like do the steps. And I'm like, why are you pointing your toe? Like stop, like you don't have to do it like that. It's more of a just fluid. Like it's fluid,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Amanda Thompson, she's mean to me.
Well, it's so funny. I love being part of the sister banter back and forth. And I think coming prepared for today and thinking about Working Girl, and if you were breathing in the 80s, you also have to know what was on TV at that time. And dominating the ratings was The Cosby Show. Now, that was something my mom did allow me to watch and didn't taint with any kind of, adult conversation. But, I think The Cosby Show was such an important part of my childhood. I can go back and watch and think about wanting to watch it. But I don't know about you guys, but when you think about The Cosby Show, who was your character? Who was your favorite Cosby Show character? It's a hard one.
Is it? Not for me.
No, Rudy. 1000.
Who was yours, Amanda Thompson?
Well, I loved Rudy because she was so cute, but I think Theo was just hysterical. I don't have a brother, and so I always would laugh and think to myself, and again, 2 sisters, right? I always would laugh to myself watching him thinking, it would be hilarious to have a brother. I always wondered what it was like to actually have a brother, and Theo was just such a brother that I could relate to in the house, always with his antics and the way he engaged with the girls at the house. So like, I don't know, I gravitated towards Theo, but why Rudy? She was cute.
Yeah. And I guess like Amanda Thompson, for us, she was the closest probably or she felt like closest in age. She was the little one and I was like the little sister. But I will say, if there was anyone else I would pick, it would have been Claire Huxtable. And I swear, I feel like I still to this day, like I took some of her skills as a parent, like watching her as a parent, and rolled them into my own parenting. I was like, I just want to be like a Claire Huxtable because she was so fantastic.
She was. I still think about some of the lines that she has when like the kids were pushing her boundaries and pushing their boundaries, and how she would so delicately but very clearly just set them in their boundaries. And it's hilarious. It's interesting. I wonder what parenting things I took from The Cosby Show. I'm sure a lot.
That would be like a fun, breakdown of parenting, like things you did, things that Claire Huxtable did. Do a side by side on that. That's fun.
Well, I know my kids will tell you I do use the line, and this was the Cliff Huxtable line, but he would say, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. And I definitely use that one for sure.
Love it. Well, speaking of television, there was a very special made-for-TV movie that was kind of a big deal that came out this Christmas because, of course, we're talking about a December release of the movie. And so I'm into clues today. I don't know what that's all about, but I'm going to give you girls a little clue and see if either of you can guess the made-for-TV movie. I know you've seen it, Amanda's sister. We'll see about Amanda Thompson. Marsha. Can you guess?
The Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch.
Christmas.
Christmas?
Yeah.
Very Brady
Christmas.
Yes. And I have watched it many times over the years. A very Brady Christmas. I mean, you
I
can
loved the
talk
Brady
about
Bunch.
great families from TV. You've got the Bradys from the 70s. You've got the Huxtables. I'm saying that right.
Huxtables.
Huxtables from the 80s. I mean, you put those two together and you've got a perfect family.
A big family, but a perfect family.
Yeah, a really big family.
And you'd have to have an Alice if you put them together.
Yes. Well, and I have to say, Amanda Thompson, that's what people always say when they learn about Eric and I. They always say, because we tell them our family's blended. I have 2 girls. He has 2 boys. Oh, y'all are like the Brady Bunch. And I always say yes, except without Alice.
Yes.
Without Alice. Well, meanwhile, this is, remember, taking place. The movie came out in December, and also rolling out around this time was the Coca-Cola iconic holiday ads.
They have the best holiday ads for sure, Coca-Cola.
I year round find myself singing the one that comes that we see now. That's like holidays are coming, Like
I don't know that one.
That's the one that's always on.
It's the one that's always on. And speaking of
always on.
Yeah, in terms of like marketing, because I've spent so much of my career in marketing and sales, every time I interview someone who wants to work in marketing, almost always they break out into this Christmas song.
Oh my gosh.
Almost always. They want to design the polar bear commercials and they want to create the holiday jingles for Coca-Cola.
The other one that they did, I did not hear it this year, but paired with it, I mean, it's like the same. It's the one where they have the Coke boxes with the Santa on it, and they'll say, instead of, well, it will say they'll say holidays are coming, and then they'll start saying Santa packs are coming.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
my favorite
this year
one,
I only heard holidays are coming.
Oh, I loved way back old school. I'd like to buy the world.
Oh my gosh!
I know that wasn't Christmas, but
no, that was their banner.
That was it.
But it felt very Christmassy. Because didn't they have the light?
I think when it came around to Christmas, after it had been such a big hit, then they would kind of do a Christmas play on it.
Oh, it was so moving, and I'm like, it's a Coke commercial.
I know. I've cried in many commercials before, and definitely Coke commercials for sure.
Well, let me tell y'all, this particular year, the one that they were rolling out, see if you remember this, it's the one where, and this is so 80s, Santa left behind his Coke bottle top, and he left it behind a Disney VHS tape. Do y'all remember that?
I do, because we were talking,
and remember,
we had just talked maybe in our last podcast.
Can't beat the feeling.
Oh yeah, can't beat the feeling. But Disney was really into the partnerships about this time,
big time.
and it had just started. Like we talked, I think it meant, Amanda, it was in maybe a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking about them partnering with McDonald's and the Happy Meals.
Yes.
And now here they are partnering with Disney, with Coke to launch their VHS tapes. Amanda Thompson, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. I mean, I do remember all the holiday commercials that Coca-Cola had. I think Amanda S. I think I always remember I'd like to buy the world of Coke with the holiday and almost like a Christmas candle lighting, and then you'd see all the candles. And I always felt like Coca-Cola was so iconic around the holidays, and those and like Hershey Kiss commercials. And I think you can still remember the one where the little bells ring. I think they still run that ad today.
Yes,
yes.
It was always so cute. I think through that, but it's so interesting. Like when you think about movies and getting released in December, I going to movies as a kid on Christmas Day was a very common thing. And I think when you think about December, this time when Working Girl came out, like while it was so fun and it was the holidays, it was also a really sad time in this time. If you remember, on the same day that the movie was released, Pan Am Flight 103 was destroyed by a terrorist bomb over Lockerbie,
Yes.
Scotland, and killed 259 passengers and 11 people on the ground. And that for me, like when I think about that year, because both my parents worked for the airlines, I just remember them wondering if they had friends that were aboard those
Oh my gosh,
aircrafts.
Amanda.
And so my family kind of responded to that. But I remember, interestingly enough, I remember the Pan Am flight. Ironically, what I can remember is hearing a Coca-Cola commercial in the background. Isn't it such an interesting thing?
How bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
that
I
was
do
a
remember
big
that.
deal on the news. I mean, it was a tragedy.
Absolutely. It was a tragedy.
Yeah. And just in the being a terrorist attack is just really makes it really scary too. So, oof. Well, I just need to sneak this in here since you are mentioning heavy.
Oh,
There
Lord.
had,
I know where we're going and I don't even know.
excuse me, there had been some pretty heavy stuff going on around the world, Amanda Thompson. If you don't know, during this decade, the Cold War was a pretty serious happening.
And Amanda loves to mention it on nearly every podcast, Amanda Thompson.
Well, how do you not mention it? So on
Because
December
it was
8th,
part of the 80s. Like the Cold War was part of the 80s. I can remember as a child in the 80s literally going to bed being afraid of nuclear war. And like thinking I could tuck myself under my blanket and that like radiation wouldn't get me if you know. But I mean the Cold War was a terrifying thing for me to think about as a child. And I grew up outside of outside of Rocky Flats in Colorado, where you could always see the light out my window. And so the Cold War is a thing. So Amanda, I'm kind of in your camp that you talk about it because I do think it was a stamp of our decade. And I think missing just a few years and a few more birthdays, I think maybe you were handling it or navigating it in a different phase of life than the Amandas.
Absolutely. And I just have to tease her, Amanda, because she loves to mention it. I'm not going to stop teasing her, but you're right. It was heavy. It was big, but something pretty good happened around this time, Amanda.
Yes. In a speech to the UN, Gorbachev called for new world politics and an end to the Cold War. So it was beginning to get close to wrapping up, thankfully.
Well, I had actually found out something about Flight 2, since Amanda, you talked about the terrorist attack on the plane. NASA was making headlines around this time as well, because just 2 days before Working Girl premiered, they announced a manned mission to Mars to set up a lunar colony. I think we're still waiting on that, but it was announced way back in the day.
I don't think that's happened yet. I don't think that's.
I think they're just making movies about it still.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, ladies. Working Girl has a runtime of 1 hour, 53 minutes, which is a sweet spot for us. And it's rated R, which makes sense. Amanda Thompson. Makes sense considering some of the more mature themes, one of which is not her as a prostitute. But there are a few choice moments of 80s humor. Definitely not one for the little kids back then.
No, or now.
Or now. Yeah. What's interesting too is, just the mature themes. I love an hour and 53 minutes, but what's also really interesting is that the film had a budget of about $28 million and it brought in just over $103 million at the box office. And that is incredibly impressive when you think that Rain Man with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman had come out earlier that month. So there was a ton of competition. And when you think about just the dollars that this movie brought in, it's huge.
It really is. And I love me some Rain Man. Love Tom Cruise. Love Dustin Hoffman. Love me some Rain Man. We're going to cover it at Real Sisters for sure.
For sure.
Well, the movie was written by Kevin Wade, who really doesn't have a resume of movies that you just like kind of fall all over, but he wrote one movie that I absolutely loved. It's a 90s movie with Jennifer Lopez, Made in Manhattan. I love that movie. And it was directed by Mike Nichols, and he's directed some famous films like Silkwood and Biloxi Blues and Postcards from the Edge. But I think he may be most famous for being Diane Sawyer's husband. But the movie also had a great cast too.
Yeah, absolutely. It also did really well during award season. Working Girl was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actress for Melanie Griffith, which she was so good, Best Supporting Actress for both Sigourney Weaver and Joan Cusack. And as you said, it had a great cast beyond these nominees. Harrison Ford, oh my gosh, great. Alec Baldwin, and even some of the smaller roles, Kevin Spacey, Oliver Platt, Olympia Dukakis, and David Duchovny. Like, as I was watching it, sister, I was texting you and I was like, oh my gosh, Kevin Spacey. Oh my gosh, so and so. Like, I couldn't believe it. All these people just kept flashing before my eyes.
I know.
I was laughing so hard because Kevin Spacey was absolutely hysterical in that role. I just thought it was so, I know we're going to talk about it in the scene by scene, but like he was just so funny. But you see these huge A-listers in some of these small parts. And it's really interesting now, like as you say, David Duchovny, I was like, oh, that's who that guy was. Because I was watching it as getting ready to talk about this and then thinking, who is that? Who is it? It is a very young David Duchovny. It's crazy. And, you know, it's so interesting when we talk about Mike Nichols, he actually got a Best Director nomination. And I love music. We talked about music a little bit earlier today. But Carly Simon took home the Oscar for the Best Original Song with Let the River Run. Now, it is an iconic anthem. And interestingly enough, because I was not allowed to see the movie, I did love that song. And I had no idea that that song was actually connected into the movie until I watched it. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that song was just such an iconic song. But what's so fascinating is that song, Let the River Run, was the first of only 2 songs to win an Oscar, a Golden Globe, and a Grammy while being written, composed, and performed by a single artist. So Missy, you had some trivia. There's only one other person who's ever done that.
Any really? Guesses?
Any guesses?
Is it a movie from the 80s?
I think the 90s, maybe late 90s, mid 90s.
No guess for me. No guess for me.
The other one is Bruce Springsteen's Streets of Philadelphia from the movie Philadelphia.
Oh, yes. That's
now,
definitely
I love that movie, but I don't know that song.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
You 100% know that song.
Okay.
You would know that song. And it is a haunting. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Okay, I'll have to go check it out. I have something to say to you, Amanda Thompson, when you were talking about David Duchovny. Of course, we always all have our phone by us all the time. I mean, we just do.
Of course.
Do you have the IMDb app?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay, it's an app you have to have if you're like me, which I do what you did in this movie when you saw the familiar face at the birthday party that was that they were having for Tess, and you were like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? You can go to IMDb, put in the movie, scroll down, and it shows all the cast. And so I will do that anytime. Like I'm like, I know that person. I know that person. I'll go to the show or the movie. I scroll down, scroll across until I see that person. Then you can click on them and it shows their entire work. And you can say, oh, I know them from that show or that movie.
Oh, I love that. Immediately downloading while we're on this podcast.
Yes, IMDb. It's so good. So good. Okay, so a fascinating fact, or well, at least a fun fact. Did you know that Melanie Griffith prepared for her role by working as a temporary secretary in a real Manhattan office? It's like she wanted to fully understand the world of Tess McGill, and I think she did because she nailed it.
Yeah, what's interesting is both she and Sigourney Weaver did that, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I find it interesting that Melanie Griffith was also billed third in this movie, because clearly when you watch it, she's the main character, she's the star of the show, but she wasn't nearly as well known as Sigourney Weaver or Harrison Ford at the time.
Yes, and I read they actually wanted Alec Baldwin to be the role of Jack, which Harrison Ford played, but the studio went crazy because they did not want two unknowns in the lead. And I don't think Alec Baldwin would have been great as Jack. I mean, Harrison Ford nailed it.
Harrison Ford was the perfect fit for Jack, and he actually took on this role to step away from his action-packed image, and his charming, understated performance as Jack Trainer was such a great contrast to his usual rugged, heroic action-type characters like Han Solo and Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of Harrison Ford, he's just such a handsome actor. Let's just call it what it is.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we all are like dreamily talking about him in Indiana Jones and, you know, Star Wars. But, you know, it's really interesting. He's actually really well known for the scar on his chin. And in this movie, she calls it out. Melanie Griffith actually calls out the scar on his chin. And I love that he makes up this story. He talks about how he was piercing his ear as a teenager with his girlfriend. He fainted and hit his chin on the toilet. But in actuality, he actually got this from being in a car wreck when he was in his early 20s. And like, what a great way to take something and make it like a signature for him.
I think they have to address it in almost every movie. I mean, it comes up somehow because it is so obvious. And don't you know, Amanda, I read that too and saw that he had been in a wreck, but that he worked at the time at a playhouse. And so, you know, here he is. He's trying to be this aspiring actor. He needed, I guess, to get to the playhouse for a show. And so he went to like just this random clinic and they stitched it up really fast. And so it's why it left such a pronounced scar. But isn't it interesting? Don't you know, he probably thought this is going to ruin my acting career. And they actually wrote scripts around it. Like, that's pretty fascinating.
They fit it into his character. Like, they made it part of his character.
Yeah.
It's a good fit for him, though.
Yeah, it does. It makes him real and relatable. And okay, so we kind of set the scene for 88. We've shared some...
Oh, wait, sister.
Okay,
I know you're about to go into... We're about to go into more detail about the movie, but I have a question for y'all that I wanted to ask you because I wanted to... Earlier, you talked about how Melanie Griffith and even Sigourney Weaver learned what it was like to be a secretary through actually preparing as temp secretaries. Have either of you ever been secretaries? Like in a secretarial role?
It is a job I would be terrible at.
I was on Tuesdays and Thursdays growing up at Max Construction, our dad's construction company. I had a temporary job. Whenever I was there, his real secretary, Miss Teresa, would leave.
Shout out to Miss Teresa.
Shout out to Miss Teresa. We'll have to tag her, Amanda. She'll have to listen to this. She'll get the biggest kick out of it. She was so precious to us. She always treated us with such love and kindness. But I would go in on Tuesday and Thursday. She would let me sit there. I don't know what I did. I answered phones. I called in numbers for bids, which is why all my friends now make fun of me when I say numbers over the phone, because I had to enunciate them very clearly because numbers mattered when you're putting in a bid for a construction job. And so I would be like 439-728-64. Whatever it was, right? And so I had my little taste of that. I actually had one other little job where I was kind of in that secretarial role in an insurance company for Dana's dad's friends. Dana, my best friend who's been on, right? For her dad's friend who had this small insurance company. And I learned to decide I didn't want to do that. I wanted to choose something different. And I did.
Did you do this secretarial work during the summers too at Max, or just after school?
No, in the summer. Oh, only the summers. I didn't do it.
Oh, okay.
Tuesdays and Thursdays in the summer. Let me be clear.
In the summer.
Yeah, I should have said that. I'm sorry. No, I didn't. No, I was too busy.
I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
And I would go run little errands. Yeah.
Amanda S., how about you?
Nope. Mm-mm.
Oh, I knew that answer. Amanda didn't work in the summer. She played. Did you work in the summer? Yes or no, sister?
No.
Did you have summer jobs?
I did sometimes work at John White.
That was more like on into college and you wanted the discount for the clothing.
I did not work in the summers when I was in high school. No.
No, she played Amanda Thompson. She played.
I did.
All right. Well,
we're just jealous.
I know, right? Did you have, so we just have to pause here. Did you have summer jobs in high school, Amanda Thompson?
Absolutely. I started working full time I was a nanny starting at like age 13, because this is what you did in the 80s. Like you hired a 13-year-old to come watch your 8-year-old, your 6-year-old, and your 2 or 3-year-old all day. You hired somebody who couldn't drive, but I was a certified Red Cross babysitter. Like we would never do that today, but I loved being a nanny, and kind of word got out that I was a really good nanny during the summer. So a lot of times I would like full-time nanny for families, and then I would go with them on holidays. And so that was kind of my summer gig, was being a nanny. And
I bet you made good money.
I made great money. I loved being around kids. It was so fun for me. It didn't really feel like a job. So it was really nice. And I was making good money. In fact, I bought my first car with my babysitting money.
You're
very cool. She's such a working girl.
Such a working girl. I did do a lot of babysitting as well. Wasn't called nannying at the time for me, not in South Mississippi, but I definitely babysat. All right, working girl, let's go. Real fans, we've set the scene. Let's dive into the movie itself and see how it unfolds.
Okay, real fans, the movie opens on our main character, Tessa's birthday. She is on her commute to her job in Manhattan on the ferry. Her best friend, Sin, is headed over to work as well, and she surprises her. They're on the ferry, and she surprises her with this cupcake and candles, and it's this really, really sweet moment between these close friends. And I have to say, we hear the amazing music of River, what's it called? Oh gosh, I lost the name of it.
Let the River Run.
Let the River Run is playing during this like intro part, and it's already like I'm getting pumped up. Like the music.
I know
is
you
so
two
good.
girls love that, but I don't love that song.
Oh my gosh,
I'm gonna
love it.
Get some hate mail for that.
I think I just grew up with it as like an anthem of empowerment, and so it just, again, I think there's more nostalgia for me than there is like of the song. Like it would definitely not make a top 100, but when I hear it, I can immediately go back to my life in the 80s trying to like record music without the DJ talking.
Catch it right as it starts. Don't miss that first note.
Yeah.
Well, I will say in my research, that song is still kind of an anthem, and the movie is like this still a motivation to women, even, all these years later. But can we pause here and talk about the look of these girls, because it's 80s everything. It's 80s everything. I mean, like, okay, so Melanie Griffith, she's got on, first of all, her hair, I kept thinking, oh my gosh. Like, and I know there's a transformation, but I was like, that hair is so fried. It is
so fried, but when I see pictures from that time, our hair was fried.
It probably was, because we all went and got our perm, right? We had our perms, and then when they started coming out, they looked bad. She had on like this, checkerboard skirt with polka dot tights
and then white shoes.
Tennis shoes.
Reeboks.
And then Sin, her hair is as tall as the
Empire State Building.
Yes, it was so tall. The makeup was out of control. What did y'all think when you were watching this?
It was hair for Jesus. And I was like, I'm just like, yes, like that.
You were you were for it. I mean,
I was here 80s. For it, because I do like when we see the transformation, I think that's correct too for a certain like group of people, but the way they looked was also very real, very realistic. Now it may be a little bit extreme, because I know
it was overpronounced
to make Yeah, but also make a difference between like they're coming in from one of the boroughs across to Manhattan where
Yeah.
everything's a little bit fancier and but that's legit. That was
It
legit.
is. I was laughing so hard at their hair when they were walking off the ferry ramp because it looked like they had stood on the edge of the ferry and just had been totally windblown with hairspray. And I was
Yes.
watching it with my husband, and he said, I cannot believe this is how women used to wear their hair. And I said, I know. And speaking of bride, I was telling my husband how to get my hair that big, I would take Aquanet hairspray and spray it until it turned white. And then
Yes.
I would take like my hair dryer and cook it into my hair and let it sit
Yes.
until it turned white. And then like it would eventually become clear. But the amount of hairspray that I sizzled into my hair with either a blow dryer or a curling
Or
iron,
curling iron.
can you just hear it? You can hear it like go.
And
Oh, yeah.
yes. And then, yeah, and then it would have the little white flakes. But that was so true. You would spray it until you could see like the white foamy. And then you were like, okay, I've got enough. It's
Yeah.
not going to move.
Okay, so we've got the look down, but I have a question for Amanda Thompson because you have had such big jobs in big cities and all that. When Tess gets to work, she takes off her Reebok high tops. She undoes the Velcro and she puts on her office shoes. Have you ever worked like where you wore your sneakers and then when you got into the corporate setting, you switched into your like heels or whatever?
I would say I have never worn like high tops or sneakers, but it is really common that I do carry flats in my purse because
Uh-huh.
I love high heels. I wear high heels. When I was in my 20s, I could probably traipse all around Manhattan. But now as I've gained birthdays, I don't want to do that to my shoes because if you've ever walked around a big city, there's grates, etc. And if you wear stilettos, the back of your stilettos just get ruined. And so
Completely ruined. Yes.
yes, and it's so disappointing. So I think I did that just more because it's comfortable. You are walking faster, but also not to trash on your shoes. But what I love about Tess is like you get a sense from the very beginning that she is just a go-getter. The Reeboks and the shoes included.
Yes.
I feel like that was a very much a signature like
I
power
agree.
move. Yeah, a power move. And you see, what I love is like you see her in these opening scenes that she's busy multitasking. She's getting her degree. At the same time, she's trying to catch her big break. And she really is she's so excited to be working her way to an executive position. And I feel for Tess because I feel like you can feel her wanting to get a new opportunity, but everybody just overlooks her and she gets no respect. And the guys are terrible to her in this movie.
Yes.
Absolutely
And I think
terrible.
they're making a state. I mean, I think that's making a statement. But I do have to say, thinking about her really being a go-getter, when I was in New York and I was student teaching, I used to wear my sneakers and I would put on my work shoes when I got to school.
Yes, you did. And I didn't ask
Mhm.
you that because in my mind it wasn't corporate, but you did
Yeah.
walk the streets of New York, taking
And
the
I would
subway to get to
wear
work.
my tennis shoes. And then when I got to work, I'd put on like my cute like school shoes. So I was a go-getter. But
Yes, you were.
no one was taking her seriously. And like you said, Amanda the guys were just awful to her. And she just had, I don't know, just something about her presence and her voice. And she was just amazing to me. But they were treating her like she was a bimbo airhead. And she just can't seem to get ahead. And she's been turned down for the associate training program so many times. We hear that that's like a thing that's happened multiple times. But the quote unquote nice folks she works with remind her because she's up against Harvard and Wharton grads. Yet at the same time, they are using her ideas to get ahead.
Yes. And okay, so later it's the end of that day, and Sin tries to talk Tess into going out for her birthday, right? But she says no, she's got to go study. Amanda, it goes back to what you were saying. Like she's hardcore. She wants to get ahead. So she says no, I'm going to study, and she's also putting herself through business school. y'all. So a lot's going on. So she comes home and she finds that Mick, her boyfriend, played by Alec Baldwin, has thrown her a surprise party. Now, I want to say something right here I saw in my research. Amanda Thompson, your mom may not have been too far off with some of the things that she was getting vibes from about this movie, because when I was doing my research, I found that Melanie Griffith, the actress, was very attracted to Alec Baldwin, the actor. And propositioned isn't the right word, but told him that she wanted a romance. And he said, no, thank you. I don't get involved with people at work.
That is shocking.
No kidding.
Yes.
And also awkward.
Yes, awkward is right. So
was that before she got with Antonio Banderas?
Well, I think she was married to Don Johnson twice. Did you guys know that she was married to Don Johnson twice?
Right.
They had a 1-year marriage the year that you and I were born in 1976. They divorced.
That's right.
She married some other cat. I couldn't tell you his name. And then they got remarried, had a very tumultuous divorce. And then now she's with Antonio.
I wonder if she was married to him at that time.
She was not, because when Alec didn't take her up on it, and this goes back to Pam's like sense of mommy sense, spider sense going out. There was a businessman who came on the set, kind of like a consultant, but also a business worker in the scenes. And she found him, in her words, to be incredibly like sexy. And they began, a tawdry romance that lasted for about a year, that she had very warm things to say about the memories that they made.
Who knew that Melanie was such a lover?
She's a lover, not a fighter, I guess.
I mean, that's probably how she ended up with Antonio Banderas, because he's like a Latin lover. So they're so steamy, those two. I've always wondered, I'm like, they don't seem like a good match, but now I understand.
Oh my gosh.
But speaking of like not a good match, I didn't think that Melanie and Alec were a super great match. And I think as it starts to unfold, like why. And going back to like the scene by scene, I mean, so here she is, she's had a really long day. She's coming in, she goes to this surprise party, like, oh, it's celebration. And then the next day, she just has one of those days that is terrible.
Yes.
And I mean, it is literally just terrible. And you see her boss that is talking to her about going to meet this guy, Bob Speck from Arbitrage. And, he's selling her that he has an opportunity and that this is a way to get into a new program, but he's looking for an assistant. And this was one of my favorite scenes because it is played by Kevin Spacey, and he is literally just a super sleazeball. Like he is doing coke in the back of the limo. There's inappropriate videos going on. But I love it because you just see Tess be such a boss here that he's drinking Dom Perignon out of the bottle, and she grabs it from him after a heated confrontation where she says, like, I know what you're doing and I'm not here to do that. And she shakes it up and just dumps it all over him and then gets out of the car. It's pouring down rain, and it's a typical New York scene. Like, she's standing on the middle of a median, and now all these cars are just dumping water all over her. I mean, I feel for her.
I agree. It was so good. And I forgot about that part when he's like, hey, let me show you. And it's this corporate video. It's totally not a corporate video.
Totally X-rated.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was funny is when they're talking about pairing her up with him, and they keep using this phrase about like that he wants somebody that's hungry. They use that throughout the movie a lot, and it kind of like tickles me. You've got to be hungry, you've got to want it, and so she was hungry, but not that hungry. And she says that. She says that. She's like, I'm not that hungry. And you're right. She gets out of the car, and I couldn't help but thinking like, I would have gotten out of the car too. Well, I say that. I don't know if I would have gotten out of the car with that pouring rain, but if I did, I would have at least tried to make it like in a better place to stop.
I had that exact thought. I was like, I would have told the driver to pull over, at least give me an overhang or something.
Exactly. She was in the worst spot in the middle of all that traffic on the median. But she does get out and she is furious, which of course she is. I felt so bad for her. But the next day, she writes on the office ticker tape, like,
it has the stocks. It has all the stock prices that are changing.
Yeah,
like because it's the 80s. It's like manually somebody's typing in the change to the stock.
Yeah, exactly. And she's and it says that David is a pimp, and it's just going across around the whole office repeatedly. David is a pimp. So naturally, this gets her into trouble, and she is reassigned. Her placement officer reminds her that this is her third placement in 3 months. And this is her last chance. Like, this is it. And she's sitting there and she has the sweetest little voice. And she's like, but it's not my fault. But it kind of is.
I laugh when Olivia Dukakis is like, hey, calling your boss a pimp is probably not going to keep you in the job.
It's not going to keep it. That's not going to help you climb to the top.
He deserved it, though.
Oh, he totally deserved it. He totally deserved it. But this is how she ends up in mergers and acquisitions as the secretary to Catherine Parker.
Catherine Parker, played by Sigourney Weaver. And I love the scene where we meet her because the entire office, all the ladies are standing around, they're chit-chatting, they're sharing the gossip. And we know that Sigourney Weaver, Catherine, is entering the office because everyone gets quiet and they go to their spot and everybody just gets back to work. And it's hysterical, but she walks in and they talk about that Tess just turned 30 and she says that she's about to be 29. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
She's about to be 30. So
she's about to be 30.
I'm also about to be 30.
Oh, okay. So I knew 29 was in somewhere because in actuality, she was like a decade older than Melanie Griffith, right? But it just is a strange situation. That's a power move for her. And it intimidates Tess a little bit because she's never really worked for anyone that's younger than her. But Tess gets all moved in and Catherine begins to lay down the ground rules.
And I want to add something here too, Missy, when you were talking about her coming into the office, this was a really interesting part too, because there was a very clear visual, a very clear dynamic in the way Sigourney Weaver looked and carried herself versus the other women, the secretaries in the office that were out in the cubicles. Like that was for the audience, like a very defining moment of
Very true.
You could definitely feel executive presence between Catherine and Tess. And I think they were cast very well and they played that role. And it was really interesting because I think then you see Catherine and her demeanor immediately after Catherine kind of lays down those rules. Like she starts insisting that they're a team and she wants Tess to share her ideas and that she's out to help Tess and that she's going to help her do all of these things. And so Tess actually takes her boss at her word and suggests that an idea that she has, which is a company called Trask Industries. And she's suggesting that they invest in radio outside of television. This company, Trask Industries, has been looking at mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions also in the 80s were like a huge thing. Hostile takeovers, all of those components. And it's really interesting. So as Tess starts sharing this, you can see Catherine processing the idea. And the idea is bold and the idea is smart. And what is so interesting is that Catherine seems so supportive and she promises to pass it along and give her stamp of approval.
I know. And Tess is thrilled, right? She's so excited. She goes home and she's telling Mick about it, her boyfriend. And again, Amanda Thompson, you said it, like they don't seem compatible because he's dismissive. He's worried about the fact that their pizza's cold and he just doesn't care. But what happens is she ends up being disappointed because Catherine comes back later and tells Tess that no one was really interested in her idea.
I wanted to ask y'all a question. Do you think that, and I think this is an obvious answer, but I want to throw it out there. Do you think that Tess felt that immediate like trust when Catherine was telling her we're going to be on a team and I want to help you, that she felt that trust because it was another woman? Like that was what let her put her guard down?
I would say no. I think Tess felt her ambition and she looked at Catherine and was like, oh, she's a woman. I'm a woman. I've worked for a bunch of guys. And so I think she felt like, woman to woman, you know how I feel and you're going to advocate for me. I think what we see in this scenario is Tess lets her ambition get the better of her and doesn't quite fully vet Catherine before she shares the idea.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I couldn't say it any better than that. So, we'll just take Amanda Thompson's word for it.
We'll take Amanda Thompson's word because she is a working girl. So
she is a working girl. That's right. Well, now we see Tess helping her boss try on ski boots for a ski trip, right? Where Catherine is predicting that the man she is seeing is going to propose on this ski trip.
Not just, she is predicting, but she's hardcore. She's like,
yes,
hardcore. It's going to happen.
And you in this scene, you get the sense that Tess is now in there. Her idea's been shot down, and she's now just basically managing every detail of Catherine's world down to her ski boots. But while Catherine is on her ski trip, womp, 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 she breaks her leg. And she calls Tess and gives her a list of things to do, including house sit for the next few weeks until she can travel home. And so while Tess is going down that list and going through Catherine's schedule, she discovers that Catherine was making plans to pitch the radio idea as her own.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next scene, can we just pause and talk about what Sigourney Weaver is wearing in the hospital in this scene?
And everything going on in the hotel, not the hotel room, the hospital room.
It's hysterical. So if it's been a while since you've seen it, Sigourney Weaver is wearing almost like a white negligee.
Yeah, like a lingerie. Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
lingerie. And she's got her leg in a very Hollywood style cast up propped and everybody's touching her around. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this was your outfit of choice. And it was hysterical. And then you also see that as Tess is like acclimating to this now downplayed role as an assistant, she's house sitting and she's going through all of Catherine's stuff. Like she's wearing her clothes, she's putting her perfume on. she is literally living in her boss's house. And so I think she's just having this moment where she's, okay, my career is not where it's going to be. I'm now a house sitter. And so then in this next scene, she comes home and she finds Mick in bed with another woman, Doreen, a woman that she knows, and she's devastated. And Alec, again, you see Alec, you just see this mismatch between the two of them and as characters. I think in a great role. I think it was a great perspective, but she's obviously devastated. And this is really the turning point. This is when she's at her low. This is when all of a sudden, like she's got to get it together and make something of this moment.
Mm. Yeah. And it is great because she has somewhere to go, right? She can go to Catherine's apartment. I have to back up for just a second, though, before we move on to the next scene here. When we were talking about her finding out that Catherine was actually sharing the idea or thinking about the Trask idea, and she sees it on the computer in Catherine's house.
Yes.
Y'all, the computers in this movie, from the ones at the office to the ones at home, I mean, they are
green screens. They're green screens. They're actually, my husband, who's 11 years my senior, said to me last night, as we were talking through this, he said, those were actually called dumb terminals. And I said, what's a dumb terminal? And he said, they actually didn't have like a computer behind them. They were going back and forth to the mainframe, getting code, and it would just surface up information. There was actually not like a computer unit. And I thought, well, interesting. They called it a dumb terminal. But I mean, they look like they're 150 years old.
Yes. Is that like MS-DOS? It's like MS-DOS, isn't it?
It is. Green screen.
Yes.
It was really funny. And like, I remember at some point somebody was like, at one point, your schedule's going to be on the screen. I guess that's something you could boop, 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 put in. But I got a really big kick out of the computers. That was cracking me up. But yes, so Tess decides she is done with that life with Mick. He was cheating on her. She's out. She's taking control. And like I said, she has somewhere to go. She's going to go to Catherine's apartment and she can just reinvent herself with Catherine out of the picture for a little while. And I did think it was funny. Catherine was going to be gone for I don't know how many weeks, but I was like, that's a lot of weeks to have to be gone for a broken leg. But she was going to be gone. She gets her friend from the beginning, Joan Cusack's in, and with that amazing hair, she helps her with this transformation. First, she cuts her hair.
I love it when Sid says, if you want to be taken seriously, you need serious hair.
Yeah, that sounds like something you would have said to me at that time. It hurts to be beautiful. Well, Tess borrows Catherine's wardrobe and gets to play the part of businesswoman. And I think that's the part too where she even shows the dress and it was like $6,000 or something.
Yes. And she's like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out. No, yeah, I don't think it was there, but yes, it was somewhere. What Tess does is she has decided that, oh, no, you're not, Catherine, going to pitch this idea. I'm going to do it. And so she sets up a meeting with Jack Trainer, who, of course, is Harrison Ford's character. And she uses Catherine's name, she name drops, to get in the door with his company to pitch and facilitate the idea of the Trask merger and acquisition. But before that meeting, she gets all dressed up in the $6,000 dress, Amanda, that you mentioned. And she's going to go to this big dinner that's hosted by Jack's firm because she's going to introduce herself.
Did you notice when she got dressed up for that, like the lingerie, like all the paraphernalia she was wearing?
Yes.
Who does that? I was like, what are you doing?
It grossed me out. I'm sorry. It grossed me out.
Why did it gross you? It didn't gross me out. I was like, that looks really uncomfortable. Why did it gross you out?
I don't know. I don't like that look necessarily. And I don't know. It just wasn't my favorite.
It looked like a harness. It was and you see it in multiple occasions. You know, in this scenario, like there was a lot of lingerie of the women characters. And I think in this scene, it was so interesting. Just again, I go back to my mom who wouldn't let me watch it. And I was like, oh, because it was basically like all of this very racy lingerie, especially for the 80s, you know, like you weren't used to seeing that in context, but I find it so funny that she gets, I love this part of her. She hatches up this plan that she's going to go pitch this dinner and she's off and running, but she gets so nervous because basically she's an imposter. She's posing that she is a managing partner and not a secretary. And she's really got herself so nervous that her friend Sin gives her a Valium and she doesn't know, I don't know how many. She just says it comes in an economic package. There's like a huge container of Valium. And so it's hilarious because as she goes to this dinner, she looks beautiful, but the new haircut, like she definitely looks like she's now aged about 10 years. It's definitely a chic 80s, blowout kind of look, but it's so interesting that she goes to this event. She is sitting at the bar. Jack Trainer, Harrison Ford, sees her and he is intrigued and they strike up a conversation and she says, oh, I'm looking for Jack Trainer. Do you know who he is? And what I love is he says, I don't know names. I don't want to talk about who do you know and where did you go to school and all of this. Like, let's just be two people. And then they start pounding shots of tequila. And I'm thinking to myself, here is this tiny woman who's now had a Valium. This is not going to end well. And they are clearly hardcore flirting in this scenario. And one of my favorite things that she says in this scenario is, "I have a head for business and a bod for sin."
I know it.
my
I know
gosh.
it.
That's right. I was like, girl.
He agrees.
They are major. And you talk about the Valium, Amanda. It's so funny in that scene. She like says something kind of, off-witted, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I had an antihistamine. Yeah, I had an antihistamine. It's mixed with the alcohol or whatever.
It makes for a good buzz."
Yeah,
Like it was just
yeah.
like it was just a Benadryl or something. But I have to say, I thought she looked really pretty in this part. Like I loved her little dress she
did look pretty.
She looked so classy and cleaned up, and it was like a pretty woman moment for me. I liked that for her. Well, while she's there having this whole time of flirting with Jack, she catches that there are some people from work. I think it was the people that the guys she worked with previously were at work, and she ends up leaving in a hurry because she doesn't want anybody to recognize her. And as she's trying to get out, Jack stops her and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she ends up accepting a ride from him. But she passes out on the way home from the Valium.
And the next morning, you guessed it, she wakes up at his apartment in his bed. She assumes the worst, and so she sneaks out of there. And she's got to get away. And so next scene, we see her heading to her meeting, and she's completely shocked when she realizes that Jack Trainer is the guy from the night before.
And I love their faces in this scene when they walk in, because they pretend not to recognize each other.
Yes.
And obviously Tess feels like that meeting went terribly. She's back at her office having just a total come apart with Sin. And then Jack shows up in her office with this beautiful briefcase. He comes in also looking very debonair as he walks by, all of the executive assistants sitting outside. And he tells her that he wants to move forward with the idea and that nothing happened last night. That basically he just peeked at another underwear scene, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I have a fascinating fact to share with you girls here. So, for this scene, she's going into her business meeting, and so she's got her hair like done up. So the night before she had worn it down. That time it was all done up. And it actually was a nod to her mom, Tippi Hedren, who was on The Birds, and she wore her hair up in that famous scene in The Birds. And that's why they did Melanie's hair as Tess in that scene.
Oh, wait, her mom was in The Birds?
Yes.
I'm not joking. John.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Alfred Hitchcock. I say John. Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, that was her
mom. The main lady?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And she always wore her hair up in that little
chignon.
DuPont. Yeah.
Chignon, yeah.
Chignon, yes.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. Well, after they realize that they actually do know each other, and I do have to say a little respect for Jack. When they wake up the next morning in his apartment, they're in separate rooms, separate beds. So, yeah, I thought that was very nice. But anyway, they do start working together on the merger with Trask. So they decide a tactic they're going to use. Well, she actually comes up with the idea, and he goes along with it, to crash Trask's daughter's Caribbean-themed wedding.
That wedding was a hoot.
That wedding was a hoot.
It was. And she had the idea that if we can catch him at this wedding where everybody's happy and feeling good, we can pitch this idea directly to him. And the wedding is hilarious. It's over the top, and they're dancing, and there's like moments of uncomfortableness. But Jack and Tess manage to catch Trask's attention, and he agrees to a meeting.
Can I just add here, this was probably one of my favorite scenes, because I think you see her ambition here, but unlike when she was with Catherine and she was being timid a little bit about it, you see her in full control of her ambition because
Bold
the meeting,
moves.
yes, because the meeting wasn't set. She actually doesn't even know this guy Trask. And so when she tells Harrison Ford she has a meeting, or Jack that she has a meeting, they do have a meeting, but they are literally wedding crashers, and they are faking their way in. And I thought to myself, that is a very bold decision to get in front, and also very clever and very creative. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but very clever.
Have you ever, either one of you ladies, kind of done something like really bold and almost scary to try to have a door opened in one way or the other?
No.
I think that just my personality by nature and kind of who I am, I think other people think that I do bold things, but they don't really feel bold to me when I do them. So I would say no, but I think if you'd ask other people, they'd be like, I couldn't believe that you did that.
Well,
for me,
I would say you are a bold, adventuresome risk taker in the best of ways. So yes, I see that in you. And I would say I've probably done a few kind of crazy, bold things myself over time.
I feel like, Missy, you're probably more bold than me.
We could debate this all day, but we won't.
Also, I think if we're talking about in the realm of life or the realm of business, depending on what you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think either one.
I was talking business, but I've definitely had very bold moves in my personal life that when I tell people stories, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you did what?"
Well,
I love that.
They are now working on this project together. They're all in. They're spending a lot of time together. And as you might guess, their professional relationship quickly becomes personal. And they end up in bed together for real this time. And, they're waking up the next morning, and Tess is really struggling. Like, should I tell him? Should I come clean about how this all came to be and the circumstances that she reached out to him about this idea? And so she's really struggling, but suddenly everything changes.
They're literally in a very intimate scene, and he gets a phone call and he answers it. Number one, I find that so weird, but whatever, he answers it. And he's very cryptic in the call, and she can tell that it's another woman. Like, if you've ever been in a situation, he's having a very uncomfortable, cryptic conversation. And all of a sudden, they hang up the phone, and Jack starts telling him about this woman that he's been dating. It's been over, and that they were going to go away for a while, and he was going to break up with her, which I was like, who schedules a vacation and breaks up with someone that way? Like, that's a terrible way to spend 2 weeks together, but I digress. And so all of a sudden, Tess puts 2 and 2 together that Jack has actually been dating Catherine. And this is the person that Catherine was hoping was going to propose. So now Tess is in a full-on panic because she is not only living in her boss's house and wearing her clothes, she is also now, in effect, having a relationship with the person that she thought was going to propose. And here we are.
Yes.
And here we are. Yes. So Tess scrambles to prepare for her return because she's coming back. And there's this whole sequence where she's cleaning the apartment and rushing to get Catherine's dry cleaning. And it's nerve-wracking. It's one of those moments where you're like, she's on the clock. We got to hurry. We got to hurry.
Did you ladies notice when she was vacuuming Catherine's apartment?
In the underwear.
In her plain underwear with boobs a-bouncing with the rhythm of the vacuum. And FYI, kind of back to what I've been sharing, that was Melanie Griffith's idea to be topless and just in her underwear as she vacuums. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that's how I vacuum all the time.
Oh, my husband would be up for vacuuming daily if that's how I was doing it.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I digress. When Tess now, she's gotten everything ready. And so she picks up Catherine at the airport. And I thought this scene was hysterical because Sigourney Weaver and her entrances, she's getting off the plane, or was it a helicopter? A helicopter or a plane?
It's a helicopter.
It's a helicopter, yeah. And so they're getting, all the luggage off, and she's got a stuffed gorilla on her back, which is a nod to Gorillas in the Mist.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes, and it's just a funny scene to me.
It
Tess is
is funny.
carrying
She's
all the
carrying
luggage.
everything.
Yeah,
And
It's
Sigourney
almost
Weaver
like
is
cartoonish.
yeah,
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
Amanda, go ahead.
No, it's okay. And Sigourney Weaver's also taking a muscle relaxer in this
yes.
in this scene, right? So like here she has Valium and now she has a muscle relaxer and she's hilarious. Like it's a hilarious scene.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think it's also interesting. So they're in the car, they go back to the apartment. And again, Sigourney Weaver is in this negligee on her bed, asking Tess to cover up her cast with a blanket and basically like demanding that she goes and gets these pills for her. And of course, Tess has an appointment that day. And while she's gone, now Jack shows up at her apartment to basically break things off. And all of a sudden, here's Catherine in this seduced, motion with her lingerie and talking. I was laughing because like she's talking about her biological clock. Like, here's this guy
Tick
you
tock,
haven't
tick
seen.
tock.
Yeah, you haven't seen this guy for allegedly, 6 weeks. And now like, welcome back. Let's like tick tock. Let's get to it. And I mean, it's just completely, completely awkward.
It was cringeworthy.
Yes, it was.
It was. It was. But this moment that you're talking about, Amanda, I don't know how this was ingrained. There's just these moments that get like seared into your brain. When she's sitting there with that cast on and she says, "Oh, give me the Afghan off the sofa to cover my cast." That moment, I was like, all of a sudden, I was my like 12-year-old self again. And I remember, like, I don't know why that stuck out to me, but I just remember thinking it was so funny that, like, you want to cover up your cast? Like, why would you want to cover up your cast? It's just a cast. Like, thinking it was so
Exactly.
weird, so funny. Um, well, when all this is happening between Jack and Catherine, she does not get the hint, and he has to leave to get to the meeting, the Trask meeting. So when Tess returns with the pills, she's like hiding, behind the wings, and then he leaves and she comes out with the pills, and she's in a hurry too. She leaves the pills, but she also accidentally leaves her planner behind. And Catherine starts to say, she's like, "Oh, Tess, of course, she was gone. So instead of just like setting it down, she opens it and starts flipping through and starts putting the pieces together of what's going on. And she sees information and details about the Trask meeting with Jack.
Would y'all have looked? Would you have looked if you had been on that bed and the planner
I
was
wouldn't
there?
have looked at somebody's planner. I would have
I
like
wouldn't.
that.
No, I just thought it was a funny question to ask. I love that whole scene where they're like hiding, like it's sliding doors. They're missing each other. I think that is a brilliant scene. But Amanda, when she opens that and reads it, she is furious. She jumps out of bed. She's determined to confront Tess. And in the meantime, Tess is heading to the big Trask meeting, and she walks into this room full of men. Like it's almost a caricature of what you would imagine of a woman walking into a meeting in the 80s would have looked like. So she walks in and she exchanges a smile with Jack, and you can just feel that like this is her moment. Like this is that big moment for her.
Can I
Yeah.
ask y'all a question real
Yeah.
quick? Because y'all have, like, I've been in education my whole life, but you all have been more in the business world. Have you ever felt a moment like of intimidation like that, where it was so like you were such the minority or the only woman in the room, and it was like an intimidating feeling? Or was it more of like, I'm the only woman in the room? Like, there's I don't know. I feel like there's kind of two ways to feel about it.
I have
Amanda Thompson?
Yeah, I have felt both ways. I mean, I have had multiple moments in my career where I've walked in and either didn't feel like I had the right education, I wasn't as smart as everybody in the room. And so I felt that sense of imposter syndrome that I think anytime you're in the business world, I mean, I still have this today where I walk in and I have a little bit of doubt, but then I think, okay, you can do it. And I see kind of it also coming together. But I've had that. And then I've also had moments where I've walked into a room and I walk into a room and everyone's like, oh, Amanda's here. And it's a place of
A different, yeah.
a different
It's
lens.
the opposite.
Yeah. Miss, what about you?
Yeah, I would say I've had both as well. I don't think I've ever really walked into a room that I ultimately felt uncomfortable in. There have been some scenarios that, as I have anticipated what it would be, that I was intimidated. But ultimately, once I got in there and started making connections and having conversations,
You were okay.
yeah, it resolved those nerves. So yeah, good question, Amanda.
Yeah. Well, I think I felt that too now with my work, but it wasn't like a male female situation at all.
I would agree with you, Amanda. Coming from education, for me, it's more like a teacher different
Leader.
role. Yeah, teacher leader, teacher corporate role. Like, do I belong in that world from teaching second grade?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it's a really thoughtful question. And, this is the scene, as you kind of think about this scene too, because I met my husband at work, that I personally felt this like tender moment where before this meeting gets underway, Jack kind of pulls her to the corner. The two CEOs of the merging companies are off in their little corner. Everybody from the M&A team is sitting around for let's do a deal. And Jack has this like really tender moment. But I also think it's a little bit awkward because he says to her, I love you, Tess. And she very casually says, I love you too. And I'm
It's so awkward.
It is. And I'm thinking, this is like a business meeting. And again, having met my husband at work, I would have been so thrown if all of a sudden my husband was like, oh, hi, I love you. I'd be like, wait, what?
Especially after one night together. Like they had basically had one date together. And he's like, I love you. I was like, Harrison, put on the brakes, buddy. Put on the brakes. Seems a little soon for that. Okay, so back to the meeting. Just as they're getting ready for this big meeting, Catherine storms in with her crutches and her cast, and she calls Tess out in front of everyone, pointing her crutches at her, revealing she's just a secretary and accusing Tess of stealing Catherine's idea. Tess tries to defend herself, of course, knowing that they're not going to believe her. She's like her word against Catherine's, but ends up apologizing and just leaving the meeting completely defeated.
Yeah, it's a little heartbreaking, that feeling. She's just, and you said it, Amanda, like she's defeated. She's like deflated. She's deflated, right? Because she had been so high. Well, a few days later, Tess has gone back. She's cleaning out her desk because she's been fired again. And she's headed out of the building, and she's got her big file box, and she gets off the elevator and she bumps into someone. Her stuff spills everywhere. She looks up, and the person she had bumped into was Jack. And you can tell he is glad to see her. Now, also there, Catherine and Trask and like their team. And Tess is bold again. She decides to take the opportunity in front of everyone and call Catherine out. And so she says, Catherine, where did you come up with the idea for the buyout? Because it was a really out of the box idea.
Yeah. And I found that, again, just to be so unique. And again, she gets the attention and Catherine tries to shut her down. And what I love is that Jack backs her up here. And
it's like he knows. He's got the sixth sense now.
He's realizing, I do. I think he's realizing that all of these things that maybe Catherine has been claiming is true, that, again, everything that Tess has been saying is true. And so basically they get in an elevator with Trask. It's Trask, Tess, and Jack, and they're talking a little bit about the origins of this. And you can see that Trask is committed to just her personality, everything that she talks about. And I love later he says, you have gumption. And if there's one word that I love more than the word ambition, it is the word gumption. And I just really love his conviction here, Trask's conviction and her boldness, because together they stepped off and they leave Catherine behind.
And on the write up, Tess shows Trask the proof of the radio idea that was actually her idea. She pulls out this file with the articles that she read and how she put all these connections and ideas together. And so Trask does confront Catherine, and she fumbles. Obviously, she doesn't have a response of how she came up with this idea.
It reminded me of 9 to 5. Whenever he comes back, the boss is back, and they're like, all of a sudden, the big guy's there. And he's taking him around to the child care, and he's like, Violet, this was Violet's project because he couldn't answer anything.
Yes, that's right. Well, she gets fired on the spot because...
Goodbye, Catherine.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Catherine.
Yeah.
Well, with Catherine out of the picture, Tess and Jack finally have their moment. The deal is made, and it's because, as you said, Amanda Thompson, Mr. Trask loved Tess's ingenuity. And so he actually offers her a job. It's a huge win for her, but he reminds her it's going to be an entry-level job, but she's still appreciative.
Yeah. And again, it's a huge win for her. And when she arrives at her new job, she sees what she thinks is her new boss in her office, and she's on the phone. So Tess goes out to her area and she starts to set up her desk. And we see kind of all the same familiar feels that we saw when she was working for Catherine.
Yes.
But it's amazing because what happens is the woman who she thinks is her boss actually walks out and is her secretary.
Yes. She's like apologizing and all that.
Yeah, it's the sweetest. Like, I actually got teary-eyed during this part because she was so, she was okay with going in, and I mean, I think she may have been a little bit like, well, here I go again. But she was like, okay, I'm starting off at this position and I've got my lunchbox, because Harrison Ford did pack her a little lunchbox. And
because they're a thing now. I mean,
oh yeah, they were like together.
Yeah.
They're a thing. And so she goes to her desk, and like you said, she starts getting her stuff out, and she's like okay with that and ready to work hard to get to a better position. And then I don't know why this made me so emotional, but then she realizes that the secretary tells her, oh, this is your office. And she goes in and it's just like, and it is amazing. Like, you look out and it's the New York skyline and it's so beautiful. That's the scene where she tells her, and your schedule's on your computer.
Yeah, exactly. Push Shift S. I remember doing that, actually. I can't believe I just said that.
That's what she tells her, push Shift S.
And well, Tess actually, when she realizes she's the boss, she makes it clear that she's going to be a different kind of leader, including getting her own coffee. She said, you can only get my coffee if you're getting yours. Otherwise, I'll get my own. So I loved that exchange because she was saying some of the same things that Catherine had said, except Tess meant them.
And it was sincere.
It was sincere, yeah. And she goes into her office and she calls her friend Sin. Full circle moment. She's, back with Sin. She's calling her from her Manhattan view. Amanda, as you said, the best views ever. She's landed her official dream job, and she says, guess
wait, say that again. We couldn't hear you because
because I was what is the saying? Only dogs can hear you now. But basically, She just says, "Guess where I am," and she had made it.
And it was so great because then it cuts to Cynthia in her office in the cubicles with all the secretaries, and she throws her hands up, and they're just like all so excited. And then that anthem starts playing again. Oh, so good. So I actually, interestingly enough, I was thinking about this today in the car on the way home from church because I knew we were going to be meeting. I was thinking about our question of how does this movie hold up today? And I was actually thinking I was thinking about females in the corporate world at that time. And I was thinking about now and how far have we come? Have we come far? I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting point to think about when we're thinking about how this movie holds up today.
Amanda Thompson, what do you think?
Oh, you know, I think I'm going to say in some spaces we have really, I think, elevated women in the workplace, and then yet I also do still see a continued bias in the workplace. I think I've had the opportunity to work for really amazing leaders, both male and female, who've championed ideas, who've helped me, who've been integral in my ability to navigate a corporate life. But I've also had the opposite where definitely, probably more when I've done the sales side, where it's like, oh, you're a female, and sure, I'll get an appointment with you because I'm a female. Like, there's still definitely a sexual innuendo that is an underlying component in any relationship, I think. And so I would say we've made a lot of strides. I definitely don't think people talk to me like I'm dumb. I definitely don't, I don't ever feel like I've ever been treated like she was treated by some of her
Yeah.
colleagues, in that regard. But I can tell you that I have been overlooked for promotions because I'm a female. I can tell you that
Wow.
I've been asked every illegal interview question you could ever be asked in the tenure of my career. And I can tell you that I've also had people tell me like, well, you won't ever do that because you're not part of the boys club. But nobody ever fixes it. So that's a long way around to kind of say, like, I think we've made a lot of steps forward, but I still think there's a little bit of a bro culture in many corporate environments today. I think we're getting better at it, but I don't know if it's a little hidden or not.
Amanda, I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and answering that. Because I think you definitely have the best perspective probably out of the three of us. Missy, you do somewhat also, but I think again, working in education, it's very different. But that's such a great, like a thoughtful, really honest answer. Thank you for sharing that. Missy, what do you think?
So mine isn't about the real world we live in. My synopsis is going to really talk about the movie itself. Because I think, and Chris brought this to my attention when we were rewatching it together, because it's one of his favorite movies. And as I said, it was one of our, dates within our first 3 months of dating. Is that the movie sets out to prove the point that women have got the brains, the gumption, as you said, Amanda Thompson, to the boldness to get ahead in this world, but yet at the same time, they are really sexualized in this movie. I mean, she's,
Yeah.
it, it is a continued theme. You've got the pretty girl, you've got the girl who's they're portraying, she's, cleaning the house with her shirt, in just her panties. And so I think it plays against itself in that way. It's not played straight. It's played still into the stereotypes that are still there today. It tried to be innovative and set the stage, and I understand why it's an anthem and a theme and an inspiration, but at the same time, it still falls back on marginalizing women for their bodies.
Well, I think so. Here's a different perspective on that. I had not thought about that at all until you said that, but it just made me think maybe it's also showing that women can be both.
Yeah,
Like
maybe so.
I can live in both worlds.
Yeah.
Of this feminine, beautiful, I'm wearing my lingerie when I want and feeling this way, but I also can be at the same time really smart and really ambitious.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I do
So
too.
I don't know. I didn't think about it until you said that. But what I was going to say is my thought is more about how because I don't have direct experience with feeling that way, but how it holds up today is to me, if I'm thinking of the theme, I don't know so much about the male to female part of it and that part of the theme, but the idea of just taking that out of it, but the idea of her coming from one of the boroughs,
Yeah.
probably feeling a little bit less than, not as educated, not as affluent, taking that ferry to Manhattan, um, and working her way up the ladder with, like you all said, the gumption, the ambition, her brain. She was very smart. That theme, I think, will always be something that we hold on to and love to see, and we're going to cheer for and want our want people to achieve and be successful.
So good. What a great way to kind of wrap that up. All right, real fans, that's a wrap on Working Girl. Amanda Thompson, thank you so much for joining us today. Amanda and I knew that your perspective was going to bring so much to this episode. Not only are you fun, you're brilliant, you're bold, and you are a working girl. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun. I appreciated getting a chance to actually watch Working Girl and not have the memory that it is about a girl who is not a prostitute.
I'm glad we could clear that up for you, but we did love having you, and we hope we'll get you to join us again for another episode.
I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me.
All right, real fans, it's time for next week's movie clues. Amanda, see if you can guess it, but don't say it out loud. Sister, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. This movie is the epic conclusion to one of the most beloved trilogies of
by some people
of all time.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, second clue. It features a showdown with a villain whose breathing is almost as iconic as his voice. Amanda's smiling. You think you know Amanda Thompson?
I know.
Okay.
And the third clue, there's a fuzzy little forest tribe in this one. And let's just say they know how to party.
Oh my goodness. That's next week. All right. If you think you know the answer, let us know in the comments on Instagram. We love seeing your guesses. And we can't wait to dive into this next one and be on the other side of us. That's right. That's right.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of Real Sisters Rewind. Don't forget, Missy mentioned earlier the importance of downloading. I know on Apple Podcasts, when you click to follow the show, you'll get downloads, and that helps us a ton. So make sure on the platform you listen to that you follow us or subscribe, and y'all leave us a 5-star review.
And share the podcast with your friends who love movies. Let them come have a fun time with us. Thanks for joining us, real fans. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, y'all.